Welcome to Rapid Fire Wednesdays, Q&A for corporate immigration professionals. I'm Kimberley Robidoux, a partner in our San Diego office, and I'm joined today by Miki Matrician, the co-managing partner of our Boston office. How are you doing today, Miki?
I'm well. Hi, Kim. How are you?
Okay. It's a crazy week so far, right? So today we're addressing a significant and fast-moving development in immigration actions and policy, which is the worksite enforcement actions, including raids and I-9 audits. It's important for corporate immigration and global mobility teams to understand the current situation. Like I said, it keeps evolving almost on a daily basis.
Totally agree, Kim. There's been so many disruptions and action by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement the past couple of weeks. And, in your city, San Diego, there was a raid of a local restaurant, Buena Porchetta, on Friday evening. And a couple of days later, the judicial warrant had been released. And we all learned that the restaurant was issued a notice of inspection for an I-9 audit in February. And then following that notice of inspection, ICE's Homeland Security Investigations, HSI, reviewed the status of the employees and conducted surveillance when the research found that several of the employees were undocumented. And so the raid resulted in a lot of community uprising and surprise by the extent of the action by ICE. And a week after the San Diego raid, ICE conducted several raids at various workplaces in Los Angeles. And that sparked a whole lot of protests by community members. And due to the protests and some violent action in a small area in downtown LA, the president federalized the National Guard and then sent in the Marines.
American Immigration Layers Association Verification and Documentation Committee, which deals with the I-9 and E-Verify compliance. We predicted that ICE, I-9 audits and raids would likely show up in the second quarter of this administration. And unfortunately, that is kind of what we're seeing take place. Not that we had a crystal ball or anything, but that was, kind of our best bet that we thought was going to happen. So the New York Times reported over this past weekend that the administration would pause raids on farms, hotels, and restaurants due to the major disruptions to those businesses. As many of you may have seen, there was a lot of activity in and around the Los Angeles area, including, other law enforcement agencies that were going after some individuals in farm areas. So it was pretty intense, over the past week or so. So, unfortunately, there was a social media posting by Trump late Sunday on June 15th that stated that ICE officers are now ordered to, quote, do all in their power to achieve the very important goal of delivering the single largest mass deportation program in history, end quote. And stated that the efforts to detain and deport illegal aliens is to be focused on the democratic cities, including the large cities such as Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York.
Yeah, and so we thought we would take a couple of minutes to talk about what can HR and global mobility professionals do to help protect the company and their workforce given the increased raids and threats of raids. So, one thing is we really recommend that every company have a worksite preparedness plan and policy in place so that action can be taken if needed. And then specifically, if Immigration Customs Enforcement and HSI arrives at your work site, it's important that the plan indicate that the company representative immediately contact the attorney that is assisting with any immigration actions. And the receptionist or company representative should inform the officers that, our company policy is to call our lawyer, and I'm doing that now. And your attorney may be able to come to the worksite quickly to assist or speak to the federal agents over the phone. And a valid warrant must be signed and dated by a judge, and that's a really key point. And that would include a time frame within which the search has to be conducted, and also description of the premises that will be searched, and then a list of items to be searched for and seized. For example, payroll records, employee identification documents, forms I-9, Social Security Administration correspondence, etc. It's really important to educate the company representative that will be at that front line on how to know if a warrant is judicial or administrative. It's also important to make sure that managers and employees know what everyone's rights are, which means, unless specified in the judicial warrant, individual employees are not required to provide information or documentation. And it also bears noting that, no one should obstruct or impede the officers or agents conducting a search. And while there have been raids conducted by ICE, there have also been I-9 audits, which involve an auditor, an agent from HSI serving a notice of inspection on the company. Typically, that happens in person.
Yeah. So, when an NOI is issued, the company has 3 business days typically in order to provide HSI with the I-9s and any supporting documents that were collected during the completion of the Form I-9. So that would include copies of identity and or work authorization documents. So, we are recommending that HR and global mobility teams have a plan in place to educate the individuals that are most likely to receive the notice of inspection, if they're at the front desk or just there on the property. And then other members of the team also need to be educated about what to do next after receiving that NOI. It's one thing that we want to stress is that some of the NOIs lately have not included the contact information of the HSI auditor. While it might include the name of the auditor, it has not provided the phone number or the email address at which to contact the auditor in case there are any questions. So if your company receives an NOI, that person who is accepting it on behalf of the company, should make sure that the name of the company is correct on that notice, that the address is correct, and then also that there's contact information for that auditor so that the auditor can be reached by someone in the company or by, the company's counsel. Some of these auditors are kind of new and trying to get their information via, other contacts within HSI or ICE can be a little bit difficult sometimes. One of the things as well is, because a company may potentially have only 3 business days to turn over the I-9s and any supporting documents, we, recommend that there be a plan in place to conduct at least a mini audit, which includes making sure that there is an I-9 for every active employee. And if a company uses an electronic I-9 system, the HR team that oversees the I-9 process may want to reach out to that I-9 electronic system provider in advance to make sure that they know who to contact and how long it will take to obtain the additional documents needed from the provider that are requested by HSI and the notice of inspection. So we've seen that happen in some circumstances where a company overlooks what's buried in one of the paragraphs of the NOI, that there's certain information that needs to be, obtained from that I-9 electronic service provider. So, definitely have that plan in place and may even get, samples of that in advance so that you know what to look out for. We also recommend that HR teams make sure that they have properly completed the re-verification process for employees that have limited work authorization. So those are the non-citizen nationals, or what this current administration is calling aliens, that they have authorization to work in the US for a temporary period of time. And now it's even more essential for HR teams to review that work authorization of those whose temporary work authorization may have been terminated earlier than what was referenced on the actual physical EAD card provided to prove authorization to work.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're kind of referring to the temporary protected status, right? TPS
Yeah.
has been terminated and some instances terminated earlier than expected, such as Afghanistan, which expires in July, and then Haiti and Cameroon that will expire in early August. 2023 Venezuelan TPS work authorization has already expired following decisions from the federal courts that have paused the termination of those TPS designations and then permitted the termination of TPS. So there's been so much litigation that employers might be confused, and that would be understandable. We've been working with many HR teams to understand the situation in order to determine which employees may be impacted. And there are actions that HR teams can do to determine which employees may be impacted, and to be prepared for potential disruptions in business operations.
Yeah, we're also seeing a similar situation with Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, also known as CHNV parole programs. So, following a recent Supreme Court decision, the CHNV parole programs are being terminated and the work authorization revoked. So, USCIS has started to send those notices to the individuals. We just saw some that were issued late last week and over the last couple of days. So, if those individuals are not able to provide evidence of alternative work authorization to their employers, their employment unfortunately needs to be terminated. So those notices are going directly to individuals in their My USCIS account. And we're waiting to see if E-Verify is going to notify any E-Verify employers if those CHNV parole document EAD cards are revoked. So for HR and global mobility professionals, now is the time to review workplace enforcement preparedness plans, conduct an internal or a mini audit to at least make sure to have an I-9 for every active employee hired on or after November 6th of 1986. And then a larger internal audit together with counsel may be very helpful as well in order to be prepared in the event of an I-9 audit by HSI. So some companies, that are more susceptible to an audit are starting to look at, how can they be prepared in the event of a notice of inspection. Also, coordinate closely with legal counsel to be prepared in the event that HSI shows up on the company's doorstep so that you have that plan of action in place. And then the last item to note is to review I-9s to determine if any employees are impacted by the termination of TPS programs and or the CHNV parole programs.
Those are great tips, Kim. And so, yeah, it's really an opportunity for employers to proactively assess visa dependent roles too as they're reviewing their population and, consider adjustments to talent strategies as well. And here at WR, we're here to support with compliance planning, workforce impact reviews, and internal communications as well.
Thanks, Mickey. And I guess with that, it's a wrap for this week's Rapid Fire Wednesday. We'll continue monitoring for court developments, agency guidance, and provide updates in future episodes as we hear of them. And looking forward to spending some time with you at the American Immigration Lawyers Association annual conference, Mickey, where hopefully we'll be able to be with our friends and colleagues to learn more about what's happening in this rapidly evolving period of time. So, as always, for the latest updates to the immigration landscape, please follow WR Immigration on LinkedIn, as well as Mickey and my personal profiles for breaking updates and insights. And we also transcribe each and every episode and share it through our weekly newsletter, which you can subscribe to. The link to subscribe can be found in the video description. So, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. Great seeing you, Mickey, and see you at the annual conference in Denver.
Great to see you too, Kim. Looking forward to it.